Thanks for tuning in to the 3D Tutor.
Hey guys, and welcome to a 3ds Max tutorial. This time we're looking at rendering and animation, so we're going to jump straight through. I'm going to make this as quick as I can. What we're going to do is we're going to first set up our viewport so it's obviously set up correctly, so we know exactly what we're rendering. So what you do is you go into your where it says perspective in this viewport, and then you click on to show safe frames. Now mine's fairly square at this point, meaning it's not like a high definition resolution. It's probably more sort of 640 by 480. So let's quickly change our rendering resolution. I mean, you might want to just sort of play the animation through anyway, just to see sort of what it looks like. That's okay. It goes on for quite a while, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reduce the number of frames here so it starts at frame number 40. If you're not sure how to do this, you hold the Alt and Control key, and then you can use either the left or the right mouse button to control which side you sort of bring in more frames or push frames back, or you can use the middle mouse button to kind of slide the whole timeline across. So that's how you basically adjust this timeline to your liking. So I'm going to go to about frame 40 or maybe 30. Let's start frame 30, and we're going to go to so animation stops around about 95. So I'm just going to bring 95 as my last frame. So it's going to go in, boom, there you go. That's fine. So next, like I was saying, I'm going to be setting up the actual viewport and actually the render size as well. So we're going to hit F10, and then we're going to look here where it says output size. So by default it will be on custom, so 640 by 480, but if you go on the drop down, you go to HD TV, and then you can change it. I'd say 1280 by 720 is the best resolution, because you'll get a high quality, high resolution render that will be nice and crisp, but it won't take forever to render. So 1920 by 1080 is probably a little bit too high resolution unless you got lots of time on your hands. Next, I'd probably say render with the mental ray if you're using lighting, which I recommend. I mean, you should be using lighting with the animation renders, so make sure you stick those in there as well. If you don't know how to add lighting, go and check out my video, which is called, I believe, how to create soft shadows using mental ray. So that one will show you how to create your free lights. So we're going to go with NVIDIA mental ray. Now this might look a little bit different to your 3ds Max version if you got anything like 2012 or anything like that. It might look a little bit different, but the overall process is exactly the same. Whether you use mental ray or whether you use default scanline, it won't make any difference. So anyway, once you've set the resolution, you can see how the safe frame window is changed shape, or has changed shape. So now it's going to be a little bit more envelope shape, so 16 by 9 ratio. But if you went over to the custom size, you'll notice that it's a bit more square, not quite as wide. So I'm going to go with that one, and that's going to give us a good indication of how your render actually is going to be created. So making sure there's no cropping on the character. So the last thing you'd want is something like this, where it's just sort of showing the bottom half, but this kind of tells you exactly what's going to be rendered within this frame just here. Okay, so I'm just going to play that through, make sure it's kind of roughly where I want it. That's okay, maybe a bit lower. So anyway, once you've got that ready, we're just going to make sure within rendering and exposure control, we've got the exposure control set to MR photographic, and then hit render preview, and that will probably be pitch black. Oh, don't select that. You're going to then go down to exposure value, and you're going to reduce the value until you can start seeing your character in there. That's probably a little bit too bright, so let's bring that down a bit. 0 is normally a decent value to start with. Now I don't have light, so it's going to look pretty mundane. So if I just hit F9 to create a quick render, you'll notice that it's fairly plain, but it's going to do the job right now. Not going to matter too much. Now for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to create a render which is a little bit smaller in size. I'm going to go with 480 by 270. Like I said, you should be going for 1280 by 720. Next, what am I missing? We're going to be setting the time output to match what's in our timeline. So the best way to do that is go onto active time segment. So what that means, it's going to animate, it's going to actually render the animation between the frames that are shown essentially in this timeline, so between 30 and 95. If you want to sort of animate, if you want to actually render an animation which is maybe 30 to 60 or 30 to 70, then you go to range, and then you can type in the start frame of the render and the end frame, just there. I'm going to leave it on active time segment. On that note, actually, I think it's pretty much done. So what you do is you just literally hit render. I know I am missing a step. So what you do before you do that, don't hit render because it's not going to be saved anywhere. What you do is you go down, you see where it says render output, you need to click onto files. I'm going to stick this on the desktop just really quickly. I'm going to call it, I'm going to overwrite this one, which is a test that I did earlier. So punch test, overwrites it, yes. And what you want to do actually is you want to make sure you set your file type to AVI. So if in case you haven't got a file that you're already overwriting, which is an AVI, like I did, you want to make sure you go to formats, all formats, and then AVI file, and that's going to make sure that it's going to be saved in that correct format. So what you do then is you can just hit save. So you name it, you hit save, and it'll open up this little window which will allow you to change the compressor. So by default it will be uncompressed, I believe. So you want to make sure you set it to MJPEG compressor, and again by default it's going to be 75% quality. I always take it up to about 95 because it's still fairly small, but it gives you a really good render as well. So you're going to hit OK, and then you're going to hit render at this point. So now if I hit render, hit yes to overwrite if you are overwriting, you'll notice that it's going to whiz through every single frame, just rendering it out. I know it will look like the same frame, but I assure you it is animated. It is actually rendering the animation. About a minute or just below a minute left, so I'm just gonna wait until this is complete and I'm gonna show you the results. Okay, so here's the results. Basically, as you can see, it's just that little short. I mean, I know it's not low resolution, so it's not exactly the best, but hey, you've got a render done. This is the movie file, and pretty much done. So hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial, guys. If you did, please do hit the like button and do subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you all next time.